You're listening to The Invisible Addiction, investigating problem gambling in the UK 2020. I recently shared my own experience with problem gambling. Lots of people got in touch wanting to find out more. When did gambling go from being fun to a problem? Where did you get help? How did you recover? So the aim is to provide you with more information about problem gambling and to highlight the effects of addiction to younger people. In this podcast series, I'll be speaking to a number of guests to hear their perspective on this highly emotive and often taboo subject. Problem gambling, after all, is the invisible addiction. In this episode, I speak with a trained hypnotherapist. I wanted to find out what impact an addiction has on the brain. How does it affect a person's outlook on life? How do you get to the very root of the problem? All right, so joining us on the other end of the line today is a trained hypnotherapist. His name is Jouni. He's originally from Finland. He's a lovely, lovely man, and he's agreed today to talk with me and discuss a little bit more about gambling, but more specifically about his expertise as a trained hypnotherapist. So I'm interested to basically look at the psychology behind gambling and the power of the mind. It's going to be quite fluid and quite loose as a conversation. I've got a couple of things perhaps that I'd like to cover, such as the casinos and perhaps, as I say, the psychology of keeping you perhaps at the machines or keeping you gambling. So basically, Jouni, hi, how are you doing?
Hi Alex, how are you doing? Thanks for having me.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for giving us your time today. I just wondered if you could spend perhaps a minute or two just starting off by talking about a bit about your background and experience.
Yeah, so how I ended up doing this? Well, in my 20s, well, as we share the Trummers Union with you, I used to be a drummer as well in my 20s, a keen player. I had a great life actually in that sense. I was having good, a lot of fun and just playing my drums and making music. It was good fun. But then on the side, there was a bit of an addiction there as well. So I like the old, drink and bit of partying. And to me, it was sort of a package that came hand in hand. Yeah. And so, but that sort of led me towards spiraling a bit with anxiety and depression, and until one day I had a proper breakdown myself then. But that really led me to this interesting journey. And so I went through some conventional therapy back then, and which was interesting. I always had this thought at the back of my mind, thinking, well, this has been helpful, but there must be something else. How will I crack this code? How will I really change my life and get rid of all these thoughts and feelings? So that led me to this journey. So I started figuring out a lot of stuff by myself. And so fast forward some years, I just had some light bulb moments, and then eventually I found the modality I do now. And the reason why I do hypnotherapy really is that it cuts straight to the point. That's the thing for me, and that's what I wanted to find. That was what I wanted to do in helping others as well, because I spent too many years on figuring out this stuff myself. So I wanted to help other people to save time by using what I know and using the tools that I learned. So people always think of when you say the word hypnosis, people freak out because they think they only have the image of the stage hypnosis, which is of course different. Yeah. The whole idea of that is just fun, and make people to say and do funny things. This is just clinical hypnosis, meaning that we just want you to really, we just want your body and your nervous system to calm down, and your mind after that. And so then we get to the unconscious stuff, which is the interesting stuff. Just talking about something will help you, yes, but in terms of changing beliefs and changing underlying emotions that we have, which are actually driving our behavior, such as addictions as well. You need to you need to find them. I need to find the reasons why you have them, and that's why I do what I do, and it's very interesting. But it's very heavily linked to my own story as well. So I use a lot of my own experience
Yeah,
as well. So that's pretty much it.
that's fantastic. If there's any questions that kind of hover on to your personal backstory that you're not comfortable talking about, just let me know. That's absolutely fine. But that sounds really interesting. It sounds like you deal with people that are perhaps have they got a lot of issues with addiction, or is it a lot of stuff that's to do with perhaps family problems or money problems? I guess, do you see a whole variety of people?
Yeah, whole variety really, because the interesting thing is all these things, they always link up to similar stuff in the end. Once you get there, once you get to the root, it's just different types of symptoms, so to speak. So, but I do seem to attract, which is quite natural, a lot of issues and people and clients who have similar stuff that I went through. Yeah, and obviously to me that's very natural to help. So people with anxieties and depression, and it's quite inspiring for me to work with people who are sort of looking to transform their life in some way. So that's very interesting. But there's all these things that come with it, such as addictions as well.
Okay.
So it's a very, it just goes from side to side. Sleeping issues,
Really?
it's a big one as well. Addictions, anxiety, depression, all the usual ones. And so all sorts of things. I've done even a while ago I did erectile dysfunction, which was interesting.
Okay.
But it was linked to something else. Yeah.
I was going to say that's a big taboo subject actually that doesn't get talked about openly, because you see quite a lot of Viagra, don't you? Kind of for sale in gents' toilets or whatever. And I don't know about you, but I used to think of this as like, is this some kind of joke, or like, is this some kind of thing that when you're really drunk, you're not going to be able to kind of get it up? But actually, this is a real big issue, I think, for men.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also because it's very difficult to trace back, because sometimes, quite often, you go to a doctor. If you, as a man, if you're brave enough to go to a doctor and say, check me out, what's happening?
Yeah.
Pretty often they would say nothing. I can't find anything wrong with your body. So that leads you back to your mind, what's happening in there. So then if you want to go and find out what's there, there's usually something underlying there that is then causing these kind of issues. So they're all linked, sort of.
Sure. And Jouni, if it's okay, I mean, I don't know if you want to draw on from your personal story or from, I don't know if your confidentiality, if I'm kind of reaching into areas that are unconfidential, as it were. But when it links to things, I mean, for example, in my own case, what I found through my kind of gambling addiction, a lot of it was covering up, trying to quote unquote find who I was, or who I am, kind of thing, and trying to become, trying to really get down to the root of like who I am, what life's about, some really big, open, some dark places or whatever. But a lot of it I found was stemming from perhaps like childhood, to do with perhaps upbringing, to do with like the family unit and the dynamics amongst that. I had a conversation with a friend this morning that we both are the eldest children in the family, and perhaps is there a kind of pressure on ourselves to kind of feel like we've got to set an example? I mean, there's a whole host of these kind of psychological thoughts. Is it to please my father, to get his attention, or he's been quite successful with his career, to try and follow in his footsteps? Some really kind of fundamental questions that I don't think would lead me to addiction, but an addiction perhaps is covering up and masking these issues. So I suppose what I'm trying to ask is, are these are the things that are you finding at the root of the problems, or?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And this is the problem with, especially with men.
Mm,
With us, the problem is, if you tell a guy, let's have a look at what happened when you were really young, they go, no, I've had a great childhood. There was nothing going. They didn't beat me up. They didn't rape me. They didn't abuse me.
mm,
I didn't see anyone being murdered. Um, you go, yeah, but the thing is, it doesn't have to be as big as that. This is the fascinating part. There's always something there,
mm,
and most of the time we don't know it. We don't know where it came from, and so the thing is, most of our parents, they're great. They've done their best and they've done a pretty good job, but there's no handbook for parenting, right? So it's so easy to for something to happen when we're really young
mm,
that makes us start creating beliefs and stuck up these sort of um, uncomfortable feelings inside us which will follow us. And what happens is, because this is all unconscious,
mm.
that will start guiding our whole behavior and what we do.
Wow.
And really, with addictions, for instance, that's is quite often is the lack of connection.
Mm,
But with addiction, it's very easy to get connection by using or doing that, whatever the addictive thing is,
mm,
because you get that feeling and you get to bury that uncomfortable feeling that's inside you. Um, and if you don't know why the feeling is there and what that really is,
mm,
it's difficult to get rid of it. So I always look at it this way: you can go and try to change the behavior you have, but it's very difficult. So let's say it's gambling.
mm,
You can do that, but if you want faster and bigger results, you may want to dig in and find out, why do I feel this way? What's the underlying feeling and where does it come from? So because when we're really young, we are being coded.
mm,
So this sort of there's different kinds of theories, but it's pretty much between the age of 1 and 7 or 1 and 6 when we get the most programming in our minds, because we are in a sort of in a hypnotic state, right? When we don't have analytic mind when we're that young, so we just soak up everything, we take everything in. And so let's say, for instance, if someone's parents, let's say my parents, for instance, they abandoned me for 2 weeks, but the real reason they did that was to go, I don't know, go for holiday or go to, they had to do something which was important.
mm,
But me being 3 or 4 years old, I don't understand that. And if that's not being explained, I would easily start believing that I'm not good enough to be loved because my own parents left me here. So it sounds crazy, but that's how it really works.
mm.
Because our brain is not developed enough at that stage. So we don't go, oh, they went for holiday. That's good for them. I'm going to have a party. Meanwhile, we go, oh, why did they leave me? So these kind of things, they have an effect, and they pile up. And so because we don't know them, they're not consciously in our mind. So if I talk with you and I say, Alex, why is this? Of course, you're not gonna be able to tell me, because it's all unconscious. It's on the subconscious side of your mind. So
Mm.
really looking at the feeling is everything. So you find the feeling and then you find the healing, as I always say. So
Wow.
um, that's really behind everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Some really interesting thoughts there. I mean, just for the listeners' benefit, or the viewers' benefit, I said to Jouni that this was going to be hopefully about 20 minutes conversation, but
Yeah.
we agreed before that we could probably talk quite heavily about this for a long time. I mean, you've covered some really interesting topics there that I've not really thought about, linking right down to the start of childhood. I think that I think I did hear this before, saying, between 1 and 5, 1 and 6 years is when, you're socializing, you're just, as I say, soaking up all this information. It's already kind of spurred a load of other thoughts for me, about my family, and I have lots of brothers and sisters, and it's making me think a little bit more about how that relationship kind of works. So this has been really, this has been really interesting. If not just for the gambling, just to kind of delve further down the rabbit hole, I suppose. But to kind of to try and steer the conversation a bit more onto gambling, a little bit more, if we may. So, I mean, there's a lot of psychology behind like the power of marketing. So like the use of colours, and certainly in casinos, for example, like the use of the colour red, for example, is quite alluring. And what that means, the psychology behind that. For example, there's no clocks, so the feeling of time just kind of vanishes. So a lot of problem gamblers will talk about, being in this bubble, this like having a fix between them and the betting, or the roulette wheel, or the machine, for example, in the bookies. I mean, just on the bookies, a friend was saying to me yesterday, the machines, they're called FOBTs, fixed odds betting terminals, but these machines apparently were set up by or designed by psychologists, that apparently they said that you would win once in every 7 bets. So it's kind of it's designed to kind of keep you there, but to draw you of money. And again, even though you're winning, you might be winning less than your stake. So, the psychology of that, of like the flashing lights, keeping me entertained, but actually in actual fact, I'm losing. I mean, I don't know if you could draw on any of your experience at all about that, as it were, about the power of the mind. I don't know if this is necessarily your expertise, or if you have an opinion on how powerful that can be.
Yeah, sure. It actually is really interesting what they do, because there are some smart people behind that, because they know exactly what they're doing. So they know that there is a lack in someone who walks there and wants to spend all their money in there, right? So they've really been putting a lot of thought into this. How can we fill that void, that lack? How do we do it? And as you mentioned, all these details, all the colors, lights, the lack of time, creating this sort of world that takes you in, and that's really what takes you away. So coming back to as you said, the power of the mind. So when you have uncomfortable, when you have feelings that you want to suppress, when you don't feel good inside, you want to sort of, you don't want to see them or feel them. So this kind of bubble is perfect. It's just perfect, because you enter a different world where you don't have to see or feel any of that. You enter a different world and everything's there and it's flashy, and that's how you fill the void. So that's one thing. It's very interesting. And then how they do it's really all the details. And then as you mentioned in your previous podcast, you talked about the gamble responsibly and all these slogans, which obviously is, I mean,
the ludicrous, the irony, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
But everything is designed to, every single detail is designed to a T. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's some kind of psychology behind that, because they understand how our brain functions, because they've designed everything to sort of make it perfect for us to distract ourselves from what we don't want to face. So that's really it. And because coming back to the brain, so our mind and our brain has only one main job really, which is to keep us alive. And how it does that, it is always trying to push us away from pain and towards pleasure. And this is what it's all about, because when we don't want to deal with these emotions we have and this not feeling great about ourselves, then that's the pain. And your mind goes, yeah, don't worry, I know a place where there's more pleasure, and it will push you towards that place. So
that's quite interesting, actually, because MRI scans on, like brain scans on the dopamine levels of a problem gambler. This is quite interesting because actually they've shown the dopamine levels are almost identical whether you're winning or whether you're losing or just participating, of like the thrill of
Oh
the,
yeah.
I'm going to win next time and stuff. So it's interesting because, for example, when I was going to the casinos or betting online, spending hundreds of pounds, sometimes thousands of pounds, it was bizarre because obviously I was transfixed and I was trying to win a lot of money and quote unquote beat the house. But in reality, I knew that I was going to be causing myself a lot of pain, short-term pain in terms of like financial pain, but the long-term pain was actually, leading to things like depression, stress, anxiety. So it's interesting because I don't know if I'd be able to say I was going to gamble to get away from my feelings, because I think at the time I was just almost like a rabbit in the headlights, very naive.
Yeah.
There were feelings like gambling is quite secretive. It's quite cool. It's quite trendy. The casinos, it's cool. It's trendy. I felt a bit more like a man. I felt like I was becoming a man. You see this in films and these cool like film stars like Ocean's 11 and things like this. And you think, yeah, I want a bit of that. I'm becoming a man. I'm being a man. So it's very interesting what you say. I mean, I can relate to it, but I don't know. It's almost like the problems came after the gambling and things like that. So I don't know. It's just a point to ponder. Sorry, it's not really a question. This almost feels like I'm drawing from, like this is a therapy session or something like that. But I'm not. I should be asking questions, not just talking about.
No, it's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point. And probably, yeah, I'm sure that's how it really felt. I might still suggest that there was something to begin with, but probably you weren't aware of it.
Mm.
And then, but it's true, when you're young, you get more drawn to these things because there's so much that we get excited about,
Yeah.
And certainly this is one of those places where you go, you're like, wow, what's happening here? It's like a different world. And as you mentioned, that's a good point as well. Unfortunately, it becomes then a double whammy because you have the addiction to gamble, but then as you start spiraling in terms of losing your relationships and connection with people and financial trouble and all that, then it turns into depression and anxiety.
Mm.
So that will lead you to further and further, you start sinking deeper and deeper, and then you get a new layer of issues, and then it becomes really, really hard to get to the root of the whole thing because you have so many layers, and it's like a spider web.
Wow.
I don't know how you sort of experience this.
I think no, you've you've hit the nail on the head. I think they say statistically, problem gamblers will go, enter into substance abuse, other addictions as well. And this is what happened with me. There were a whole host of other things going on at the time, like a failed business venture, but then the spider web kind of continues. Then you think, I'm a failure because I've got no money. I'm having to move home with my parents. I'm an adult. I mean, I said to myself, if I was living at home by the time I was 25, I would consider myself a failure. Well, I ended up living at home till I was about 29. So this just sort of massive burden. And then things like being up late. I was self-employed. I didn't have a routine. Lack of sleep, like you've mentioned earlier. Lots of other different issues. Underlying stress from drug addiction and things like this. And then smoking, and then all this kind of anxiety of like, I'm doing all this stuff that's bad for me, but I can't stop it. So if I could ask, like, for example, to bring it back to your line of work, interestingly, like, I knew I kind of needed to stop, or I knew I needed to get help. It was like I recognized I had a problem, but because of an addiction, I guess because of the addiction, it's very easy to go, I need help, but actually to get help and kind of get yourself out of the situation is a lot tougher. Do you find with your clients, for example, do they come to you? Do you tend to find there's a pattern of when they come to you in their journey? Do they come to you straight away when they've just started an addiction, or or they've had other issues, or has this is a big thing, this is a big moment for them where they have this light bulb moment of like, wow, I need to go and see a hypnotherapist?
Yeah, most of the people, they only come when they're at the end of the sort of the end of the road, so to speak, which is
Last time,
sad because
yeah.
I wish there was a way how to this is what I'm actually working on. This is my lifelong project. I want to find a way how to connect to people earlier, and so how to make people wake up earlier before you get to that stage where you're just you're either you're going to kill yourself or you go and get help. So that how can we get to that sort of what can we do so that people don't get to that stage? Because back to your question, they usually come when it's very late stages already. So they've tried everything and they're like, okay, I give up. There's nothing. What can you do for me? That kind of thing. And they start recognizing that they're sort of, it's a dead end. So there's only two ways out. Um, and then at that point, quite often it's pretty layered. As I said, there's so many layers. So most of the time they come and say, oh, I've got depression. Okay, fine. And then they go, you know what, this started when I had the gambling or whatever addiction, and you know what, before I had that, and then after that it came this. So they get very caught up in that spider web. So my job is really to peel that off and show them where does that come from, because the fact that they have depression, it didn't come from the fact that they were gambling. That came from somewhere else. So and so there's two things. There's the actual addiction that is a real thing. So yes, if you have substances, for instance, they can create an addiction through your body. But then, to me, what's more interesting is the motivation behind that, which is emotional motivation, which is driving them to do that. As you said, I want to stop, but I don't know how. I need to stop, but I don't know why I don't stop. It's that kind of thing. So that means there is a driving force, unconscious driving force, which is pushing us to do that. So that's why it's more difficult if you sign up to a clinic to stop taking drugs for a few weeks. You feel great there, but as soon as they release you back, once you left, it was just an environmental conditioning that helped you to stay sober. And then it becomes really difficult again once you get back to the old your old life. So there's a driving force, and this is something which is, to me, that's the whole heart of the work that I do. So I try to cut straight to that, because it's beneficial to me and the clients. And so, and once again, that's why I do what I do, using those tech.
I was going to say, ever the businessman, me. I mean, if you were there to make your money, you would look to draw it out as long as possible. But
yeah.
No, but
absolutely. But you know what? It's personally, I find that it's quite heavy if I'd have to listen to someone for 5 years talking about a problem and not making any progress. It's heavy for me as well. So that's why I hear a lot of really sad stories. When you hear someone talking about how they were abused or whatever, some heavy stuff. I don't dwell in that. I feel sad for them, but I know that I'm going to help them. So that's what I'm focusing on. So that's the great thing about it. So yeah.
That's, and do you find, for example, I think you made a really interesting point, for example, about like the environmental situations that people find themselves in. So for example, if you're into, like say it was a drug addiction, you come out of that, but then what you've got to do then is you've got to change your friends, you've got to change your living situation and things like that. So that can come at a big cost. But how long do people tend to have their sessions with you? Is it like they do it for a few months and then they feel like, do you know what, Jouni, I'm cured, I'm good of this? Or do they come back to revisit you? Or how does that work?
Yeah, there's different options. Sometimes Sometimes it's only one time, something very simple, but normally I do about three. As you said, it's a couple of months.
Yeah.
So try to plan it. You'll see pretty like in the early stages, you will see straight away if they need more time, and some people they change like that. They can change like that. Some people they're not there yet. They get the understanding and the light bulb moments, but it will take them longer to sort of make the changes. The fact is, even though if we have this stuff coded in our brain is elastic. So that means we can code it again and get rid of the bad stuff. But sometimes it takes a while. So I see it like this. I take them to work with me for a month or 2 months, and then I show them why they do what they do. Then I help them to change that in their brain. But after that, I cannot, hold their hands and do everything with them. They need to be then able to go and make the changes they want to make in their life, because usually it means you have to make practical changes in your life as well. It's not just the mind side. So I do a bit of after the actual therapy, I do coaching as well, or mentoring, whatever you want to call it. I like that as well, because I find that it's very important to change your routines and your habits. That's another step. But before you do that, you need to unblock those blockages that you have inside you. But after that, you need to also get practical. What am I going to do with this? Then you create new habits, new routines, do new things. That's then the next step, and then the last step is to make it permanent. So that step I cannot, I can't do it for you. You have to do it yourself. I can tell you how, but then it's down to you. Do you really want to do it? But so no, therapy doesn't have to take 3 years or 5 years. Sometimes it takes one day, sometimes it takes some months, sometimes some weeks, but yeah, we'll always get results. But I challenge them to work for it as well, like I did.
Yeah, and I mean, did you get hypnotherapy yourself, or was this something that you kind of you almost ended up in by accident? Well, I say accident. Obviously you wanted to help others and stuff, but what was? Sorry, I've got a ton of questions to ask, so I'm just going to shoot from the hip as usual.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Another question that's just popped out of my mind as well is for example, when you're in the sessions, you said it's about relaxing the nervous system and things like that. So again, I think of a hypnotherapist. I think of that kind of caricature guy that swings a watch or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't mean to demean it at all. I'm just sorry, that sounded a bit like an asshole,
Yeah.
saying that. Sorry. I mean, sorry. The anxiety of like, oh my god, I just said something terrible. I've just insulted you. But
that's fine, and you know what? That's why I mentioned in the beginning that I don't go around telling people, advertising myself as a hypnotherapist, because using the word hypnosis is a bit. They don't know what it means in this environment. And why it's you. There's a reason. It's not just to look flashy or do something magical. It's not magic. It's just science. And I always say to people who are like, oh, I don't know if I can be hypnotized. I said, okay, just think about it as a moment of relaxation, relaxing or meditation or whatever you want to think about it as. So that as simple as that.
And is that then you? Sorry to interrupt. Is that you then? They're in a relaxed state, and then you're talking to them, and they talk back, or are you trying to reach in? I'm very interested to know about the process there.
Yeah. So it's still conversational. Yeah, there's just a certain way of doing it. It's still conversational. As I said, it's not about getting someone into deep trance. It's just there's still, you're in control. And it's still conversational, but suddenly you're able to access feelings and information and memories that you couldn't before. And if we were talking like this on a very conscious level, there's always this element of, what does he want me to say? What should I say? You always have too much time to think, And that's not a good way to, but a lot of people do that.
That's me. You've got me. You've sussed me out straight away. That's me
Yeah.
down to T. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So that's really the idea. So yeah, the sentence the phrase I always use is, if you can feel it, you can heal it. That's what I always say. So you have to find out what is it what's the uncomfortable feeling, because that is always linked to a memory. What happened to us is actually not that important, because that doesn't affect us. The feeling we attach to it is the one that is actually affecting us and guiding us. And the truth is, it's not just half of our life, it's not just 25%, it's literally guiding like 95% of our life. So
Wow.
our whole behavior pretty much. That's why you want to be sure that what's there is good stuff instead of something that is harming you. And if you have this conflict of wanting to do something else but always ending up behaving in the opposite way, then that means there is a conflict, and then that means you have a self-harming belief.
Wow.
Unconsciously, which is guiding you. And not usually, it's just to do, with confidence. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable enough. And sometimes, if you ask people to say things like "I love myself," they go, "Whoa, wait. I can tell you that, but not myself. That sounds freakish. I'm not going to do that." But
I have heard of that actually, and the power of saying repetition, like sentences and stuff. I mean, I actually tried this myself, where you say, like, "I am brilliant. I am really brilliant. I am amazing." Just like feeding yourself positivity. Because again, that was the thing that was kind of weighing me down. Was like, for a long time, I then started to have I was just negative. Like, I felt there's this kind of sphere of negativity around me, and people were just feeding off this negativity vibe. Again, I don't know if that was overthinking or whatever, but because I would continuously have some very dark thoughts, I would just be like, I just moan about stuff. And I think there has been some science behind, like, if you're thinking negatively, that impacts on you and stuff. So you can. I'm definitely a believer. Definitely a believer in this.
That's absolutely true. This is, once again, this is not some.
Oh no! I've just realised we've gone over the 40-minute threshold. How have we? I don't know. Sorry, Jouni, if you're still listening, if you can still hear me, you've cut out. You're frozen. Oh no! The conversation was just getting juicy.
On legs, walking around. So we attract what we are, and that's how as you said, when you start changing a dialogue, how you speak to yourself, you start feeling in a different way, and suddenly you start attracting similar stuff. More things similar to that will start coming to you, and people as well, and other people start treating you in a different way, which is another big thing. So if you don't believe that if you believe you're worth nothing, that's usually how other people will treat you as well, and that's the problem. And then it will come sort of like, you get a confirmation for that belief that you had about yourself, because, oh, they treat me as shit as well, so yeah, that's true. But if you, so that's why it is very important, the way how you talk to yourself. As crazy as it sounds, actually, that's where it starts. Everything starts from there. And because the thing is, our life is just a perception. We have so many filters. You think we only have a pair of eyes? No, we have like hundreds or thousands of filters between our eyes and our brain, and those filters are making everything a bit blurry, if you know what I mean. So the way we look at our life and ourselves is just a perception. If you change the perception, you start changing the life as well. It sounds simple, but that's really how it is. So you're absolutely right. And the thing is, when you are down that rabbit hole with things like addictions and stuff, they will just destroy your confidence. And that means your self-dialogue is really, really negative as well. And that's why it makes it even harder to get back up from there. And so, but the good thing is, you can do it yourself anytime. So you don't need a new car or house or new wife or anything. to start feeling better about yourself. You're the one who can start it.
Yeah.
So it really needs to happen unconditionally. And as it does, then your life starts changing. So yeah, when you hear these mantras and this stuff that people say, oh, think positively. Well, not really. So, but I know what they mean by that, but think positively won't work.
Yeah.
But
Positive vibes only and all that, Yeah.
yeah. So you can't force yourself to do it, but you can choose to start changing the dialogue. And same thing with confidence, Confidence is, people don't realize that this is one of the greatest things I discovered myself. When I realized that, oh my God, confidence really is nothing to do with what I do and what I've achieved. Actually, it's nothing but my own opinion about myself. And then people say, yeah, but your opinion is based on what you've achieved and what you do and who you are and what kind of partner and house you have. So no, it's actually opinion, because everyone's looking at their own life in a different way. You might go to a guy who has it all. He has a great house, beautiful wife, a lot of money, but they still look at themselves and go, no, it's not enough. No, I don't know what to, it's not enough. I still don't feel enough. I still, and then you might go to one of these, what we call poor countries, where they have a different communities and different cultural ways of dealing with life. And usually those people are the most happiest with the less things. But what they have is that sort of unconditional way of looking at themselves. Like, well, it's a gift to be here, So that comes down again to the dialogue you have with yourself. It's so important. It's so important. But yeah, just to wrap this up, in order to think positively, you want to try to remove, that underlying bad feeling, because that's always driving you to think negatively. So that's why the phrase, oh, think positively, you're fine. You're depressed today. Oh, you'll be fine tomorrow. Your life's great. Don't worry. Yeah, it doesn't work.
No, you can have all the slogans you want. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. But once you start realizing the power that our mind has, you start realizing that actually I am creating all the outcomes in my life. Yeah. Then you start using it to your advantage. You start using it to for good. So yeah,
it's that's really good. I think. Oh, I'm sounding like a robot. I don't know if this is coming through. So this is. I think this is a really good thought to perhaps wrap things up. Because I think that for me, sorry, to relate it back to my story and whatnot. It's all me. But
no, but was the whole idea of this. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because you say about being being your own architect, and for example, like again, gamblers, they'll think they're the architect of their own downfall. That's why statistically, they'll kind of lead to suicide.
Yeah.
Like I've been able to flip that on its other way, and I've kind of gone. I've felt so horrendous. I've been to the darkest places that I could ever imagine. Honestly, big, super questions like, is there a God? What happens when we die? The fear of some really heavy stuff. But I've kind of gone through. It sounds a bit cliche. I've done some soul searching, but that's what that's what the whole thing has felt like. So now I can flip it on its other side, and now I'm like, do you know what? Yeah, I can be positive. I can change that. I've now got addicted to this frigging YouTube channel. So it's like a good addiction. I've got addicted to like running. I've got addicted to like cooking. Some other kind of things. So I can certainly see when you say you are your own architect. I can totally resonate.
Yeah.
And I think
I forgot to say one really important thing. Once you realize that these feelings and these behaviors, they originate from some time when you were not capable of deciding whether what was going on. Once you realize that, it's not your fault. So I'm not saying you don't have some legal you know, responsibility. So if you owe someone money, or if you killed someone, or if you hit someone, you have to go to court and you have to pay for it. But in terms of yourself and your confidence and how you hate or love yourself, when you realize, once that moment comes when you realize that, you know what, it's not my fault. It was just an autopilot. I didn't create that consciously, you know.
Mm.
It's not my fault. That's very liberating already in itself, because that shame and guilt is another thing that it's such a burden. And it was so funny. The other day I was walking with this woman who, she'd been in a really bad way for so many years, and she'd gone through like psychologists and therapists, and I was on the phone with her and I said, yeah, listening to a story, I need to tell you something. You do understand that the way you are today is not your fault. And she started crying and she said, why? No one's ever said that to me. I said, such a simple thing, right? But it's true. Once you realize that, you go, oh, wow. So you can start being better towards yourself. And then, you know, because there's always this guilt and shame and this sort of trying to hide, especially with addictions. You're also trying to hide what you're doing, and it comes with all those really unpleasant feelings. So to be liberated like that it's quite nice, really. And so, but yeah, the last thing I wanted to say is, I agree what you said. Once you start tackling something like an addiction, what happens quite often, I've seen this almost, well, every single time, people start doing what you call soul searching. So it becomes some kind of a awakening spiritually as well, because they start seeing life in a different way and they start understanding what's happening. So there's so many benefits to that as well. As you said, it's not just, I don't think I've ever seen anyone just fixing only the addiction or that one thing that was there. It always leads you to open your eyes more to the whole life as well, which is pretty cool. And that might lead you to a completely new path as well. You know, you might end up, you know, finding a new career or new something, whatever it is. So it's quite interesting what can happen, really.
That's it's incredible. Now, Jouni, I think we better stop there. We said, well, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and it's been well over that, but I don't have any problem with that, because I think it's been an incredible conversation. There's so many things that have been sparked that it's got me thinking to, you know, my youth, and there's so many cool thoughts to come out of this. So I can only say thank you so much for being on the podcast, and thank you for giving your time, because it's just been such an eye-opener.
No, thank you, Alex. Thank you. It's been great. Magnificent chat here. Really loved it. Thank you.
Another big thanks to Jouni for sharing his insight and knowledge on how he helps people tackle addictions. I highly recommend listening to his podcast, Are Men from Mars, which treats you to conversations about men's mental health. The main takeaway point to come out of this conversation for me is that having an addiction is not your fault. For a person with a gambling addiction, the layers of guilt you face, the constant lying to others, the secrecy and the internal conflict, to hear it's not your fault is incredibly liberating. That really struck a chord with me. It was also interesting to hear how tackling addiction can change your outlook on life. You'll see things in different ways, it can lead to new opportunities. So I'm interested in finding out what people can achieve post-gambling addiction. Let's find out in the final episode in this series of The Invisible Addiction.